Okay, fantastic.
Frontline. Your weekly episode of the Blue Party melodrama just got better, and your usual actors are back on stage, beaming with phenomenal talent. The stage this time, the extraordinary Delegates Conference of the FDC. Planned the extraordinary National Delegates Conference called by FDC's Chairman Ambassador Wanswa Bidigwa, openly defying a court order prohibiting it.
There is several resolutions that have been, constructed.
Spain from leadership of the party the following. Please listen to the Secretary General Honorable Nandala Mafavi. 3, the Treasurer General Honorable Ekanya.
The road to freedom begins today. And of course, we shall free our headquarters at Najanankumbi.
Meanwhile, the Najanankumbi faction is spitting fire.
The manner in which this particular so-called extraordinary delegates conference was organized departs from the normal.
We are not operating outside the law.
As the once biggest opposition political party disintegrates, just as President Museveni promised, those that were once in the top echelons of the same party are not surprised.
Uganda for
Today we ask, is this brawl set to stop anytime soon, with both warring factions unwilling to cease fire? How legitimate is the interim leadership declared at the Katonga Delegates Conference? Can the FDC heal and soar above these internal bickerings? This is The Frontline. Frontline.
A very good evening and welcome to this edition of the NBS Frontline. And I'm Charles Mwangu Shampagi. And the Forum for Democratic Change, once Uganda's biggest political party, just shy of celebrating 20 years of existence. The FDC was registered in 2005, and so in 2025 should be celebrating 20 years, but the party is facing one of its biggest splits ever. Just as you heard, the party president, Patrick Amuri Atoboy, if he's actually still the party president, because an extraordinary delegates conference was supposed to have ousted him and replaced him with Arias Lukwago in interim capacity. But at Najanankumbi, nominations for new office bearers. Every side, Najanankumbi and Katonga Road, are saying the so-called. To discuss that, we've shuffled the entire frontliners. We have a new team, one historical frontliner with us here, and we'll be discussing with, let me start from the extreme end. I have Mr. Opoka Kenneth Geoffrey. He's chairman, Forum for Democratic Change, Agago. I'll be asking him where his loyalty lies between Najanankumbi and Katonga. We have returning to studio after a very, very long time. I haven't interviewed Jack Sabiti in a very long time. He represented the people of Ruchiga County in Parliament before. Very nice to have you, sir. And one of the founders of the Forum for Democratic Change.
Thank you.
I have senior citizen, Dr. Miria Koburunga Matembe. She doesn't need any more introduction. Very nice to have you, ma'am.
Also, one of the founders.
One of the founders of the Frontline. And I have Major retired Awich Paula. He's a lawyer. He's director external affairs of, he says, the mighty National Resistance Movement Party, a former UN judge, expert, human rights Geneva for 8 years, and a former Kadogo of the National Resistance Army. I have online joining us, founding president of the Forum for Democratic Change, retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. Doctor, do I have you online?
A very good evening to all of you out there in the studio, and a very good evening to all the NBS frontline audience, wherever you are joining us from.
A pleasure to have you, Doctor. Let me start with you. My very first question to you is a very general question. What is happening in the party to which you were the founding president, the Forum for Democratic Change?
Well, what is happening in the party is certainly nothing surprising to me. It is something that we have been talking about for quite a long time, only that it hadn't played out its full course. The first thing is that political parties are democratic institutions, or are supposed to be democratic institutions, and they frankly cannot thrive in a very undemocratic environment like we have in Uganda. And especially talking about the circumstance of Ugandan politics, one of the cardinal elements that affects all parties is the commercialization tons of money. And the controller of that money in the whole country, who has locked up all avenues for citizens to access money and thrive in the economy of the country, is Mr. Museveni. So Mr. Museveni controls the country's resources, the country's economy, and we have commercialized politics that needs money. That inherently exposes political actors and political organizations to become vulnerable to undue influence of that who controls the money. And so what we have been having is increasingly people from different political formations possibly remaining with the colors of their formations, but increasingly influenced in the process of their getting elected by those who control the money, and that is Mr. Museveni and his family. Secondly, what is happening also in the Forum for Democratic Change is against a background of quite a number of our colleagues who have been engaged in the intense struggle since the FDC was formed, and some indeed even before the FDC was formed, and who have been saying now that the struggle has taken a very long time, that people are tired, that we have tried everything, we have tried elections, we haven't succeeded, we have tried demonstrations, we haven't succeeded, and therefore, and we don't see where it ends. So there are those who have lost faith in the struggle that they embarked on, and who have been seeking that all of us now undertake some kind of a negotiated surrender, that we should talk to Mr. Museveni, negotiate to share power with him, whatever he gives us, in pretty much the same way as some of our colleagues in the other parties have done. Now, these two elements, the commercialization of politics, and of course, hovering over all this is the militarization of politics. So those who want to occupy political offices, and political offices have been made very, very attractive. So many people are fighting to enter those political offices. They are the most lucrative offices in the country. And so the influences of these dynamics is what is playing out in the Forum for Democratic Change. As you may have heard, the latest crisis in the party started during the last general election in 2020-2021, when indeed in pursuit of getting funds for running the party, dirty money found its way, which has now been characterized as dirty money found its way into the party, and has since set the stage for the kinds of things that we had never seen in FDC, especially two things. One, which is elections that are frankly the total opposite of what FDC set out to fight for, the democratic society that FDC, that is underpinned by the FDC ideology. We, for the first time, have had elections that within the party that are a total joke. And the media has been very effective in exposing this, where at the grassroots elections, when grassroots elections were announced, and they were claiming that there had been grassroots elections, many media operators indeed went out to check this, and it was exposed that there were none. And so we have had selections rather than elections, which is a very, very strange and subversive occurrence in our party, but all of it motivated by trying to avert a challenge by members of the party who don't like what has been going on. The second thing that is extremely strange in FDC is the thuggery, the violence and thuggery now surrounding the FDC leaders. Frankly, something that one would never have in the remotest way imagined that such a thing would happen in FDC. You now see the would-be FDC leaders surrounded by people who are hoarding truncheons, and the headquarters is now like a mafia den guarded by all kinds of wild people, and indeed locked. Nobody gets in until there is some special kind of clearance and things like this. So clearly there is a challenge within the party, and it is this challenge that one would have of the party. The trouble is that the organs of the party have themselves become largely body that runs the party on a daily basis. The day-to-day running of the party is supposed to be undertaken by the National Executive Committee. And because I think the party president, executive, he stopped calling the executive committee, and so the National Executive Committee has not sat in a very long time to resolve into the National Council, which then witnessed indeed some of the ugly scenes. That's why the party chairperson, the Ambassador Urim, organ of the party, its membership is supposed to be of delegates that emanate from all the corners of Uganda at the grassroots. And so this is really an organ of party owners. And one would have indeed expected that whatever contradictions there are in the party, they should be resolved democratically through these organs. And the National Delegates Conference, therefore, offered what could be conceived as the last avenue within the framework of the party organs to resolve these contradictions. Because what I have heard some people say, what I have heard some people say is that we have a difference in opinion on how the party should be run. In fact, I have even been accused of trying to impose some views on the party. If these were if these were true, then the right place to resolve them is through the party organs. You present, the party leadership presents the challenge they have.
I hear you there, Doctor.
The party, and the party owners would. Unfortunately, that has not happened, and that is where the situation has escalated up to the latest situation.
Doctor, two quick questions from me. How does that make you feel personally, that you're not surprised, but I wouldn't want to imagine that you expected that shy of your 20th anniversary, the FDC would be in this kind of crisis? And number two, what do you feel is your responsibility in what is happening? You used the word hovering over the party. Some members of your party accuse you of hovering over that party since you left its leadership.
Well, first of all, as I pointed out at the very beginning, I am not surprised by what is going on. Not just going on in the FDC, but in all political parties. I have stated this long before this happened in the FDC, or even before it happened in the DP. There is a structural problem, which I have described, that political parties which have not recognized the fallacy of trying to cause change using the means created for them by those who hold the country captive. Once a political party does not recognize that that is not the right way to approach the situation, it will get into a crisis like we are in. And FDC clearly failed to appreciate that it had to organize differently, internally, and approach the problem of freeing the country, Uganda, from the capture of the Museveni family, using a different approach. So there is a structural problem in applying a square peg to a round hole. And all parties so far, I have been contending that they have failed to appreciate that, and they will get into the same problems. So yes, I am not surprised about what has happened within the FDC. I have been calling on my colleagues to make fundamental internal reforms if the FDC is to survive as an organization that fights for the freedom of the country. It had to be organized and approach the liberation struggle differently. It hasn't, and therefore meeting the challenges that we have met is an inevitable consequence as far as I'm concerned. The question of whether, what responsibility me as a person accused of hovering around the party then has in this development. First of all, let me say this, that I have no, I don't have any regret in having some form of influence, political influence, within the party and maybe outside the party. Every citizen should seek to have influence, and indeed to influence events in their surroundings. That's the hallmark of every citizen. Every citizen should have the capacity to influence. Part of our struggle is indeed to create an environment where every citizen has an equal possibility to influence. What is wrong in this case is not whether I have and use some illegitimate. For example, if you use force to influence, like what we accuse Mr. Museveni to do, using the military to influence politics, that is undue influence. If you use, for example, the control of resources, the control of money, and you bribe people, and that is undue influence. But if what you are using to influence are simply ideas, saying that this idea is better than this one, that is perfectly legitimate and expected. And it is therefore those people who actually are undemocratic that would want to gag some of us from influencing what goes on around us. So I don't consider that I have not used any undue influence within FDC.
Who replaced you complained that you kept a stranglehold over the party, made them dysfunctional. The administration that followed of Patrick Amuriat Oboy is accusing you of exactly the same. And you say if you say it's okay for you to have some influence and you think it's legitimate, but people watching from outside are saying what you're doing is actually...
Dogo Mangusya, the determinant factor, accusations will always be made, kind and active politically, they will always be accused. And you shouldn't simply join the accusers, you should interrogate the accusation. First of all, I don't see it on any of the organs that make decisions. Is it me who failed the executive committee meetings and making decisions using those committees? How would I counsel? How do I influence what happens there? Now, however, if I have ideas that I follow ideas, then what the party needs to do is to process those ideas democratically. I don't favor elections, that I favor causing change outside the elections. Supposing that was the case, this is a policy matter, and the policy organs should process it. It should be presented. I have never had anywhere in the policy organs of the party where this accusation that I am hearing of has been presented in the last 5 years, and the party has failed to resolve it. Indeed, if there were any such contradictions, it is precisely the organ of last resort that would engage in such a conversation is the delegates conference. Present what, including if I am posing undue influence, present it to the party organs. I have never had any of these things presented to the party organs. So if you, Mangusya, then picked, social media chants and complaints, the first thing as a journalist you would need to do is to interrogate the leaders of the party, what they have done to process such contradictions using the party organs that are there.
And Dr. Besigye, just before I move in to, I bring in the other guests, the party, some members of your party accuse you of running a parallel group, a parallel organization through the people's government, that some members will not make decisions until they have consulted with you. I don't know how this makes you feel about where this has driven the party. And a gentleman called Chigozi Siraj is watching us, has some questions for you and is asking, what is the end game for the faction that you now lead at Katonga? Number 2 is what next for FDC as a political party? And he also wants to know, why did you not canvass support for Patrick Amuriat Oboy, who was your presidential candidate in the last election?
Well, those are a heap of questions. I hope you allow me the time to make quick responses to all of them. First of all, Katonga Road. There is only one party, there is only one headquarters at Najanankumbi, and that party has organs that are not replicated anywhere. There is only one national executive committee, which is chaired by the party president, and I asked you whether you have asked him in what way I interfere with the decisions of the National Executive Committee that the party president chairs. The party president who chairs his executive should process decisions of the party, and if he meets any problems, he can refer those problems to another organ of the party. I have not heard anywhere in any of these organs where the issues you are raising have been tabled. So are the people running the party oblivious of the organs that have been put in place for the smooth and effective running of the party? Because these complaints could be processed, if they are there at all, they could be processed within the organs that have been set up for the party. So Katonga Road is not an organ of the party. Katonga Road is a platform for struggle. Indeed, the people's government is a platform for struggle that takes on board not just FDC, but all who want change in Uganda, undertaking activities outside elections. Because at Katonga Road, we believe very firmly that the power in Uganda, which is captured by the family of Mr. Museveni, it's not in the parliament, it's not in local governments, it's not in urban authorities. All power in Uganda, we believe, is captured by the family of Mr. Museveni, keeps it using the force of guns, and we believe that to free our power and our country from that capture, we need the joining of hands of all Ugandans that wish to regain control over their country. And in so doing, we must come together regardless of our political parties. So Katonga Road is a platform to rally all who seek change, and not for elections. The political parties, on the other hand, including Forum for Democratic Change, are parties that prepare leaders and groom and prepare policy positions for running over the country in an election. So we have totally different missions. We have totally different structures. There is no point of conflict. Those who are simply purveying this whole thing that there is a Katonga FDC and a Janankumbi FDC, I consider people who are simply shying away from their own failures to run the party in the way that it should be run to achieve the objectives it should be achieving.
Okay, give me two short answers for the other two questions that I asked you.
Pardon?
Short answers for the other two questions. What next for FDC, and why didn't you support power? I request that you give me very short answers for those.
Well, what next for FDC? First of all, it is laughable for people to think that they are factions. I don't consider that they are factions up to now, because as I have said, the party constitution provides for organs of the party. The National Delegates Conference, which is constituted as provided in the party constitution, sat. It was a National Delegates Conference. Anybody who says it was not a National Delegates Conference, you have there the chairperson of Agago. They can tell you the membership of the National Delegates Conference. The membership was there. They have signed attendance lists, and they are available. They are not dead. They are in their districts. You can call them tomorrow. You in the media go and check that all these are delegates, that they were delegates in the last delegates conference. They are still delegates until their term expires on the 8th of October. They are delegates of FDC. And the delegates sat in a delegates conference and took decisions. So you cannot have a faction of a faction delegates conference. As long as the delegates conference is constituted as required by the constitution, it's the delegates conference. And there will be no other delegates conference. And there cannot be the purported election that they are talking about to happen in October cannot happen, because election of the party at the national level only happens in a national delegates conference. Now, lastly, the question of why
did you not support power?
I am struggling with
Yes, we appreciate that.
The earphones of your studio.
Yes.
The last question was, I think if I heard well, why I didn't campaign. Is that the question?
That is the question.
Yes. First of all, there is a contradiction in terms here. I'm being accused of hoovering. I don't know whether campaigning for the party is outside the accusation of hoovering. So on the one hand, it seems some people want me to apply myself to advance the cause of the party. On the other hand, they don't want me. You cannot have it both ways. But the reason I didn't participate in the elections, in the campaigns of 2021, I presented them formally to the National Council of the party, and they constituted mainly two factors. The first one is that ahead of that election, the dirty money came from the very source where we were going to the election to fight to change, you know, and we tried to resolve it ahead of the election. We failed. But secondly, and something which confirmed to me that there was something very, very seriously wrong, was that then the presidential candidate chose to go to a presidential election, a national presidential election, without a campaign management team. This is the first election of such a magnitude that I have personally witnessed, where somebody supposed to be a presidential candidate campaigning in the whole country did so without any campaign management team. Because a candidate, even the lowest candidate, must be managed, must be given the kind of messaging and so on. There is research going on. There is there are plans going on that are undertaken by a team.
Thank you.
So,
I need to bring...
the absence of a team,
yes.
The absence of a team coupled with the money coming from another candidate assured me that this was simply a phony election. It was not going to be a campaign worth my risk and effort.
Thank you very much.
And I chose to stay away from it.
Thank you very much. I hope you can stay on. I need to bring in the other panelists into the discussion. We've been at this for almost 37 minutes. Let's bring the discussion back into studio here. And I want to start with you, Mr. Opoka, Chairman FDC Agago. Dr. Besigye mentioned you and talked about, let me start with a basic question. Of Katonga and Naja Nankumbi, where does your loyalty lie?
Wow. Thank you, Charles. It's, I want to begin by saying, where did the rain started beating us? And I believe Dr. Besigye might be listening. In 2012, when Nandala and Mutu contested for the presidency, I remember before that, we were in Naja Nankumbi when Dr. Besigye announced his exit from the party. We were only two who opposed it. Me and then the MP by then was a member of parliament, Ochola, currently the chairman LC5 for Saturday. We posed the question and say, hey, we have just been from election in 2011, just 1 year, and we expected Besigye to remain in the party and reconcile and also comfort those who lost the election. The issue of exits came in. That is the source of the problem. When he was supposed to finish the 5 years, but only 2 years after the election of delegate conference, he exited the party. That's when Nandala and Mutu contest. That is the engine of the problem. And when Besigye say, I'm walking away to Katonga, starting another fight, I was in that National Council in Najana Kumbi. I've never missed any of the National Council. So from that point up to now, we have been having a problem. The election of 2017, I supported Mutu. By the way, even in 2010, even when Dr. contested with
General Mutu.
Yes, with General Mutu, I supported Mutu internally because I know him as a person. So in 2017, I also supported him. The campaign which has brought Patrick Amoret to boy was about defiance. And I believe that defiance is harming everybody. Even as we were not defiant, definitely that is the engine of the whole problem. So Mutu wanted the structures which we are now talking about. That let's make sure that we have the election of the structure. We cannot both the two approach. We can put the structure of the party and then we have defiant. My Museveni here.
Let me just take you back a little. Why was Besigye's exit a problem for the party? Why?
The reason
and why has it lingered for now 11 years?
Yes, the reason why I said the source of the problem, you know, is exit unprepared. In fact, there was no preparation that Besigye was going to leave the election. In fact, that is going to get out. And then the children, I would use the word children, the kids or the people whom he had mentored, and they were around him, which include Nandala Mafabe, include I don't know, between him and then my Museveni, who brought each other, and then include Patrick Amoret Boy, who was his campaign team in 2016. Do you know Oboy became the party president because he campaigned for Besigye? Not that Oboy was very strong, no. So people voted Oboy attaching him to Besigye. And because it was a one strategy approach, that is defiance. And now the issue of Katanga people talk about, I was also in that National Council. It was, we don't need to shift the blame. The National Council okayed the operationalizing of the two-factor function, the Najana Kumbi and Katonga. That was the mandate given
defiance
by...
and the structures.
Yes, it was agreed by National Council that let us both the two approach. And that is during Mutu time when he was the president of the party. So we never had opportunity to recall or withdraw our support from the Katanga. Nobody has brought that into attention of the National Council. So for me, I still believe both Katonga and then Najana Kumbi are one, because the mandate and the people who are there, they were authorized by...
Mr. Chairman, how is that possible? You just had a delegates conference that the party president says a so-called delegates, calls a so-called delegates conference. You are having nominations at the party headquarters and they are calling them sham nominations for elections. How can those two people be the same one?
That's why we are having a problem of where if you have, you know, power is very bad when you are given an instrument of power. If I take you back, I know what has been happening. Once, the issue of the election they are talking about in the National Council, when I was there, I was the one who proposed and say, since we are going to have the party structures, let's put it at regional level, whereby we expect the entire team of the FDC go and come in Acholi, go and come in Kigeji, where we have the party president, the secretary general, all the support of the party, go and campaign and put structures. It was accepted.
And then what happened?
That is now the question where some of us now are asking. We resolve in the National Council and let's have regional election. We move the entire Najana Kumbi to Karamoja. They put structures, then they move to Acholi, they move to West Nile. But from nowhere, we woke up in the morning and got some information that go and conduct the election. Without calling us back and say, okay, the resolution which you people had made here, we failed to implement it. Let us now revise. That did not happen. Two, the issue of the dirty money, which has now came in. Even when the matter was brought, it was brought by Dr. Besigye. None of the party members knew about this. For me, I had it at rumors. But during the National Council, when Dr. Besigye was called to address us, that's when he said, you people, you helped me. There this man who came into the party and was brought to my home 300 million. So you need to. Immediately, Nandala came to defend himself. After hearing the conversation and the submission from the two, I was the very person again who submit. I said, please, can we stop this discussion? Can we refer this matter to the Council of Elders? The only mistakes I made in that council, National Council, was we never attached names of those elders. We would have said Jack Sabiti, maybe we nominated 5. So that is what we failed to do. Now, but what I saw there now, after that now can now define where I am. I've been to National Council many times. I've never seen people like goons in the headquarters. Never. But in the last delegate National Council, I saw people. For me, maybe from here people call them goons, but for me I see these people who take marijuana and whatever. They were young boys, even the way they dressed, very funnily. They were there. I asked myself, these are the goon people we are talking about. That one signals that there is a problem, because it has never happened in the party where you have people who are not next national, the next member being at the party headquarters.
Jack Sabiti, let me come to you, sir. What went wrong with the party you founded?
The whole problem started, as my brother has told you, when Besigye decided not to not to finish his term. And some of us asked him, why? Why are you, just quitting the process or what the entire party has agreed on? Why do you want to take your own direction? I remember him telling us that, you see, I don't believe in election. And it was during Monto's time. Gave of Katonga. It is well documented in the minutes of NEC.
Why do you think so?
This is why he's still fighting. If you look at why he's, instead of using the party structures, he is now wants to stage a coup, right, to make sure that now again he's the leader. And that's the thinking of some of us. I may be wrong, but that's how I look at it. And that's the main cause, because Besigye does not want anybody to lead him. Yet we have the structures. Even starting with his own home area, he's the mobilization secretary in Rukunjiri. He could even have appealed to the entire, district. Let's take petition, and then we handle this matter. But he wants to be in Katonga. He's the best. He wants to organize the party the way he wants. He wants to disregard the structures of the party. And that's where the conflict has come. What happened when Amriat came in? We begged him, because he was our leader. We said, Mr. President, you were our leader. We now have a candidate. We want your help. Because we respected Besigye. Sincerely, we respected Besigye. We had high hopes in him to guide as our official leader, our former leader. Besigye looked at us and dismissed us. He first said, you go and organize a budget and bring it back. I was the Treasury General, as you are aware, for 10 years. I knew the processes. We asked Mafabi and the party headquarters to go and organize a budget. The budget was organized. Again, we took it to our former president. Please help us. He said, all these, me, I'm not interested. So now, we asked Amriat to go to NEC, seek permission from the party, so that they go and look for money in other sources because we didn't have enough money. And permission was given. Even there is a minute to that effect. Now, since I was not now in the structures of the party, I left them to do their work. Until time for elections came, I was instructed, Jack, go to Western Uganda and mobilize for the party. I went. Now, as we tried to mobilize, Besigye was always annoyed with us. What are you doing in those elections?
Did it matter where the money came from or not?
Sincerely, as a former Treasurer General, whenever money comes, there's a system, a party system, how we account, right? How, we have a well-organized system of how money can be explained to the structures of the party.
Did that happen in respect of this so-called dirty money?
We had just finished elections, and Besigye came up with these issues.
The election ended in 2021.
Yes.
This is 2023.
Yes, but
the issues came up in 2023.
it surfaced later, much later. He had never told us that the money you used was dirty money, right? Until recently, when this issue came up.
And then?
And that's when the National Council directed to have some people, the elders, to sit and come up with a solution. They sat. A report was done, and when they came to present the report to the National Council, again, that's when Besigye organized the Katonga headquarters, and they invaded the headquarters.
In your view, Honorable Sabiti, FDC's problem is Kizza Besigye. Is that what you're trying to say?
Let me say this. I respected that man, Besigye, and we thought he would give the party direction. But later, he diverted to individual interest, to lead. And that reminds me when some of us were for him and not Muntu, we were looking at him because he had been the first person there, and we felt he should continue for some time. But we had not, analyzed whether Besigye was doing it because of he himself or the party. So when he went to Katonga, when we gave him permission to go to Katonga, that's when some of us who were part of it, Katonga, I was a minister within,
the people's government.
The people's government. And I started questioning within, even before these things started.
Did you get answers?
How are you mismanaging the structures of the party? He would get the most mobilizing person in a structure, and he makes him a governor in the other one. I said, but can't you get someone else? Why are you taking only our people? Those people who are really doing good work for the party. And he disorganized the whole system. No wonder when, after refusing to campaign for Amri Atoboy, he expected the party, to question him. And we still, we were questioning him. Why didn't he? And that's why the issue came up. Why? All of us have campaigned for you. All the years you have been a president for the party. Why are you refusing to campaign for your colleague, the presidential candidate of a party? He refused. And later now he comes up with dirty money. That the money you used came from Museveni's side. We had held a meeting at his house. I told him, the processes, how we should account for the money. During his campaign, Dr. Kizza Besigye, during his campaign, or the monies that we organized and collected and he used, up to date has never accounted for it. up to today. He has never accounted for it. So I find it strange, a man who never counted is now demanding, right? A man who has just, finished his elections to account.
He's not asking for accountability, he's asking for the source of the money.
Yes, the source of the money.
Yes.
We have systems, we know. I'm no longer now in that structure, but there are systems. And that's when we asked Besigye, you have never counted for all the money that we gave you and you used and you collected from even other sources. Why don't you go to the headquarters, because you were our president. Go to the headquarters, sit down with accounts. If you are suspicious, they will tell you maybe where the sources of the money came from.
Honorable Kizza Besigye, just hold it for a moment. Let's take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'll bring Dr. Matembe and Major Awich into the discussion. We'll be right back.